Hello, welcome to our podcast. My name is Greg Barnsdale, and with me is James McNeil. He's the owner of Life Transitions Funeral Home and Cremation Services in Chatham, Ontario.
Yeah,
And, and he and I have decided to put a podcast together. So, James, I'll turn it over to you and you can explain a bit of your history.
sure. Okay. Yeah, you're right, Greg. I think we figured the internet was missing one thing, and it was our podcast. So, everything's coming together now. That's great. Well, we have spoken off this camera, so we know a bit of each other's stories. But certainly, the short version of my story is I was on my way as a seminary student to work in full time Christian ministry, and kind of got thrown a curveball many years ago, and then found myself suddenly switching gears a little bit and found another vocation that can enable me to serve the way I wanted to serve and care for people and still make a living. And it ended up being a funeral director. So it was kind of a funny long roundabout way to land in this vocation that has been a really good fit for me personally for 20 years now. And as a someone that's always kind of a little bit off the beaten track. I've always been attracted by new approaches, new ideas, yet still acknowledging and tipping the hat to long held traditions and sacred things. Because when you talk about death and life, you're already in a sacred space already. So my kind of journey, I guess, as a funeral director led me to be employed by a large corporation for many years. I moved into management very quickly, mainly because I was already older. I went to funeral school in my 30s, so I'd already sort of been beat up a little bit by life and had some road scars, and I was kind of acknowledged that, oh, this guy's almost a grown up. So I moved into management fairly quickly, and managed a small branch, what we call it, a small funeral home in Chatham, Ontario. And much to my chagrin, it was eventually sold. And I thought, my goodness, what am I going to do? I love being a funeral director, but I'd also fallen in love with the community that I was placed in, and didn't like the prospect of commuting to stay with the company that I was with. It was a fine company, but the thought of commuting to larger cities to go work didn't appeal to me. And ever since I went to funeral school many moons ago, I knew there was different approaches to the funeral transaction, different ways of serving a family, of whatever needs they had, whether it was a simple need or an elaborate need. But I knew there was different ways to construct and design your funeral company. So I'd been watching companies for years from a distance, and working at my traditional funeral home. And so suddenly, when I was faced with one of those crossroads of, do I play it safe or do I be a complete nut job and start my own company out of scratch? I thought, yeah, I'm going to go nut job on this one. And at 47, my wife and I, we started, our full name is Life Transitions Burial and Cremation Service, Inc. Not real sexy. So we just call ourselves Life Transitions. And we're a full service, a class one funeral establishment, but we're based in a neighborhood plaza here in Chatham. So we're a very disarming location. We have neighbors in the plaza like Jade Gardens Chinese food restaurant and wine kits. And we're very tastefully decorated here. Very disarming is the word that people have said, that people don't feel spooked out to walk in our front doors. It's a different feel than walking into like the funeral parlor approach, which there's nothing wrong with, but we're just a new approach type of thing. So anyway, that was almost 8 years ago now. And we pinch ourselves every day that we're glad that we had the courage that we had then to embark out now as we have. And we've surpassed many goals that we kind of had secretly made for ourselves. We served many families of every stripe, which was our hope, that we would really champion for the people, whatever you needed. We serve very traditional families. We serve families that are everything from donation to science to direct dispositions and everything you can think of. And people seem to be okay to listen to suggestions. And we, as you know, as a funeral director, listening is one of your key tools of listening to somebody, and then we tactfully suggest. And anyway, it's been a great ride. It's enabled me to remain as a funeral director in a vocation where I'm serving people. And that's I was remade many years ago through a spiritual experience. We don't need to belabor that, but I felt I needed to be serving my fellow humans, and this has just been a perfect fit. And now an entrepreneurial dream, I guess you'd say, to have our own gig here, and I still get to be a funeral director.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting path how you got to this point, James, and it's great to see that you're taking the newer type of approach to funeral service, because I think the funeral industry certainly needs that. Just to let our listeners know, I've been a licensed funeral director for almost 40 years now. I
Wow.
got I got into it fairly young, and I worked at it for quite a number of years, only for privately owned funeral homes. I've never worked for a large conglomerate in the past, but I got a little bored with it, and actually shifted gears and joined the financial planning industry. I maintained my funeral director's license, and I've worked in a number of different roles in the financial planning industry. I earned my certified financial planner designation, but I always found the funeral industry uh, kind of, it was hard to shake. And I think a lot of people tend to feel this way after they've worked in the funeral industry for quite a number of years and enjoyed it, as I did, serving people, as you have, James. And there is a lot of satisfaction in that, for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I did find that I was kind of compelled to learn more about the estate planning side of things, because I knew at one point or another I'd be able to take my experience as a funeral director and my experience as a financial planner and provide I guess, a unique or a different, helpful message to people at the point of death in regards to estate planning. And
Yeah.
I created some seminars, and I was at one point traveling across Canada teaching financial advisors. And I enjoyed doing that, but I've tried a number of things, and I think I have finally figured out that one of the best ways that I can provide value to people is to create a book. And I did that. I
Yeah.
did a heck of a long time. And I created a book and published it. I initially did it by myself, and then I came across Friesen Press, and I'm quite excited about this. It's really a labor of love putting this together, but I feel it's really the best way that I can inspire people and help educate them on some of the nuances of planning ahead properly, because a lot of people just simply put it off. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
in far too many situations. And that's really another big reason, James, for you and I putting this podcast together, is that we can really help people in so many different ways with your unique background and mine.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, and we really connect on that, which is interesting, because my brain hears words like estate planning, financial advisor, all those kind of things. I'm already bored, just because I'm not wired that way. We have great people in our lives, my wife and I, that help us with those what I consider grown up things, and
Yeah.
and I'm thankful for them, because they're wired like that, just like you are. Percentages and things like that, and graphs, and like stuff that just doesn't work for me. But I know how vital it is to be on top of these things, to plan things. So when we sort of connected here, almost not quite by accident, but when we connected, it was
Mhm.
the planning ahead, self-educating, the rally cry of telling people, hey, you can't put these things off, because you only have so much time.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. You and I have both seen so many situations where
Oh,
where people have died suddenly, and the remaining surviving family members are wringing their hands. Quite
yeah,
often, they didn't expect it, and the person who has died in so many cases hasn't put anything together, hasn't got a current and valid will, may not have life insurance, may not have even spoke to their family if they preferred to be buried or cremated, and
yeah.
it can just be a real mess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know certainly what is it, Tuesday? I think I've met with 8 families already, and it's Tuesday afternoon for their plans. Some people are in the beginning stages of realizing, like, maybe we should do something, and other people have already thought it through. They're definitively putting things together. We're one stop along their journey, because they have a financial advisor, they have
Right.
an estate advisor, and people like that. And people in your position often are the wisdom that says, well, now you need to go find one of those funeral people and get that stuff together too. And
Right.
it's kind of it's a sobering kind of washing of wisdom that I think people say like, yeah, whether it was a catalyst moment that got them thinking, like a funeral they went through, or just the reality of thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm 50, 60, 70, whatever the age is, thinking I'm going to die someday. And what kind of mess am I going to leave? And,
Yeah.
it's amazing how many people, well, it's not amazing. We know that we're in a very death suppressing or death denying, even pain denying culture. And
Yes.
talking about your death and planning things that are connected with your death, it makes sense. People are like, well, let's put that off. We could rake the leaves or clean the pool or make my, wash my wife's hair or something like that before I'll ever do that stuff. But we need to get over that denial and suppression of the reality that, hey, just like the sun comes up every day, you're going to die, and there's a lot of things that should be organized prior to.
Yes, and there are so many things, as we know, James, that can be done rather easily.
Yeah,
It's courage to talk with our family members about what we want to have happen, and that really was the major part of the opening section of my book that we'll get to in future podcasts, James,
yeah, yeah,
is open communication. And there are so many things that we could talk about. My suggestion with these podcasts, James, was to keep them short and do questions for them that we can post on different social platforms that we're both
yeah.
using. And I'm thinking that we should maybe come up with something here briefly off the cuff that we could wrap up this first one with some thoughts to entice listeners to come back and listen to future ones.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, I find often I need these things at times to help me learn things when we use analogy or metaphor or thing like the example of no one takes or very few people take a vacation without any planning, as in no one says, let's just get in the car, drive and see what happens. Maybe you could, that sounds like kind of a hippy dippy kind of thing, but really most people are going to take a vacation. You're going to book a flight, book the hotel, pick your meals, pack your bag properly, make sure you're going to do a lot of sensible things for a vacation.
Right.
And to liken that to your end of life or your life planning, which is guaranteed going to happen. Maybe your vacation will be canceled because of some weird wide pandemic, or maybe you'll break your leg, or maybe the resort closes or whatever. So there's no guarantees for these things that we take intense planning to put together. But yet your impending death, there's no way around it. The greatest advances in science and medicine has still kept the death rate exactly where it's always been, 100%. And so it's amazing. I think some people appreciate those little sort of pushes of, yeah, I did plan. My goodness, I planned my summer right to the T, but I don't have a will. I've never told my wife what I want. We don't have a grave. Like all these things, it almost becomes comical in a way.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. And I think the underlying message that we can instill upon our listeners is the inspiration and motivation to take these messages to heart
Sure.
by sharing some general stories or situations that we have seen in the past without, providing any details about particular families, but just in general about some of the things that go wrong that will inspire people to take this seriously and take some action.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And of course, neither one of us would ever share, people's names and things like that. But I dealt with this guy, Bill Smith, once. No, just joking. Uh, it's something that this comes up all the time. I'll sit with a family or with a couple that's planning. They get their plans all together, right to the T. We've got the obituary, the plans, like all the things that would be sensibly put into a pre-arrangement file. They've even pre-funded the whole thing. And when we get together and I'm giving them their wallet cards and their certificates and things like that, I can't count how many times they've looked at me almost with tear-rimmed eyes and said, James, we have been agonizing over this for months, sometimes years, but now we don't even think about it now. I feel like we can enjoy our life better now that we put these things in place, filed them away, and now we're kind of marching on, enjoying life. So that alone, the peace of mind
Yes.
is it's hard to put a value on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but as I was creating the manuscript for my book, I came across some information, um, a particular survey, and I believe there's numerous surveys in this theme, but this type of planning actually reduces the stress of aging.
Sure.
Anyway, there are so many benefits to it, but I think for today, James, we should wrap up this podcast,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
we can get strategizing in regards to future ones, because I certainly think that we can bring some solid value here to listeners.
Big time, big time. And if we can, just set the internet ablaze, let's do it. Okay.
Hey, let's do that. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your time today, James. I'm going to hit end here, and then
Okay.
we can just touch base here briefly after the end of the recording.
Okay. You take care.
Okay. Thank you.